Welcome to People First Builders, celebrating leaders in construction who build success through their people. My name is Fletcher Wimbush, your host. I'm the CEO of Discover.ai, a performance hiring software helping small and mid-sized AEC companies solve their hardest problem, people. We help people first leaders install and execute repeatable talent acquisition systems that drive business results by hiring top performers, lowering turnover, and building world-class company cultures. Stick around to the end and you can learn more about how to become a guest on our podcast and share your story with the world. Welcome to the People First Builders podcast. I'm your host, Fletcher Wimbush. I have Traci Austin here today. She's grown up in the trades and spent her career working in the construction AEC space. She's the Chief Talent Officer of Elevated Talent Consulting. She's passionate advocate for transformational leadership in the trades. She believes leadership development often neglects industries such as construction, HVAC, and construction. And she has a mission to change that. Traci emphasizes that great leadership in the trades goes beyond technical skills. It's about relationships, trust, and culture. People first. That's why you're here, right? And her message centers on how trade leaders can shift from task management to team inspiration, leading to better morale, retention, long-term business success, and empowers people at every level to create workplaces where everyone feels valued and motivated. Traci, I'm very happy to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It is so fun continuing to work with trade organizations and really focused on how do we connect with the people so we feel valued.
Yeah. And you were just talking to me about, you see a big challenge in this sector when it comes to people, leadership, talent. It was something about like stop bitching and start
pitching. Yeah.
Pitching.
So let's talk about what that is for sure. Here's the deal. We're all bitching about something. We're all taught how to complain. We've not been taught how to actually make a request and solve a problem, right? Yeah. So, I can name like the top complaints that I hear, when I go on site or whatnot, but I'm curious, what are the top complaints that you hear?
Well, they're probably a lot of the same ones. And the first thing I'm thinking about is Sesame Street. I have a 4 and maybe 1.5-year-old, and we watch a lot of Sesame Street. And it's when you have a problem to solve, what do you do? They have a whole thing, right? You try it, you revise your idea. I'm like, it's just coming to me, man. But anyways, I think we should do Sesame Street for construction people. When, if you got a problem, let's tackle it. Right. Cause I think you nailed it. There's a lot of like finger pointing and blame. I'd say I work with a lot of CEOs in the construction space. I think the number one thing that they say is, the people they don't want to work. They're not motivated. They're not any good. They're problematic for a whole number of reasons, right? So they're blaming the talent pool. One of my favorites is those millennials, they just don't have the same work ethic, or now it's the Gen Zs. And I'm pretty sure that every generation said that about the generation before them, right? Or after them.
Oh, right? Yeah. 1,000%. Yeah. 1,000%, right?
So what are you seeing out there? What are your clients, or, what are your folks, where are they bitching?
It's the same thing, right? It is the same thing. And yet when I sit down and I talk with folks in a framer role, or, in a foreman role, it's, well, I don't have the support that I need, or I'm not told what to do, or I don't have the clarity, or my boss just should never be a boss because they're just ridiculous. It's like this such a negativity culture.
Yeah.
And, so we can pick any complaint, the one we don't, nobody wants to work anymore is a common one. So if we want to grab that one, I think that that's great. And, so we have really a 6-step process that we work through this of, hey, how do we, and we call it our tough talk audit, by the way. So, so how do we have these conversations? But the first thing we need to do is pay attention to what is the complaints. And what I love about this is when I ask somebody what complaints they have, we have no issue listing those. But if I ask somebody what they want, a lot of times they look at me and they're like, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Or there's a saying of like, every time you bring a problem to the table, you need to bring me 3 solutions.
Right.
Maybe it's a bit of a way to start to change your mindset, right?
Right. Right.
I mean, when you hire somebody to do a job, you're hiring them to solve a problem,
Correct.
right?
Correct. And a lot of the times, quite honestly, we are not hiring the right people.
Yeah.
So we're not hiring the right people for the job because they don't either have the right skill sets, even though that maybe they know how to swing a hammer, but they're not detail oriented. And that's a behavioral trait.
Yeah.
And so we put them in the wrong job and then they hate life.
Yeah.
So it's, when we look at employee engagement, there's really 5 levers that we're looking at. One of them is very specifically, are they in the right role? The second one is my leader leading me the way that I need to be led? And this is where the stop bitching, start pitching really comes in, is that leader is leaning in and saying, tell me what's going on. And they're like, I'm upset about, Johnny over here never does anything. And every time we go out on a job site, I'm responsible for everything. And yet, why am I supposed to lead him to do this? Because then it creates friction where he's pissed at me all day and it makes my life really hard because now I'm doing double the work, but I'm getting, complained to all day long. So I feel like I'm in a lose-lose and you as my leader aren't helping me, right? That's a pretty compound complaint, but it's a common one.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's not the leader's job to do their job.
No, it's not. Yet, what leaders are responsible for is creating the container for the individual to do their best work. And sometimes it's breaking down and teaching how versus telling them what to do.
Yeah.
That's a key distinction. Am I going to tell you what to do? Or am I going to walk through the thought process with you so that you learn how to actually critically think so you can solve your own problems?
Yeah. And that's what a coach does in any business, whether you're a coach of an NFL player or a coach of a leader or a person, right?
Correct.
They don't tell you what to do. They help you figure out how to do it yourself, right?
Correct. And that's very rare in the trades industries from my experience. And I don't know if your experience is any different than that.
No, it's pretty similar, I mean, it's true in any business, but very, very much so in the trades and the blue collar, just like go fix that thing. Like,
yeah.
And that's it. Go figure it out, and
then it's like, well, you did it wrong.
Yeah.
Well, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Well, blah, 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 blah. Well, and nobody ever asks, well, how should I do it? Because now we've got this fear of like, you did it wrong.
Yeah. So everybody's just trying to do the job at a level where that's just not wrong.
Right. And I like to look at this as the have to curve. Yeah. What do I have to do to get my paycheck versus the want to curve, which is, I want to leave this better than what I found it. I want, when we walk out of this building, the owner comes in and they are so freaking excited because what we did was beyond what they thought was possible because the craftsmanship was 100% there. Those welds, we didn't have some ugly bubbles, right? Like they were seamless, so all of those little things that great craftsmen know what to do because they're so detail oriented. That's what we want, right? Is the pride in the work that we're leaving at the end of the day. And that's the distinction.
And what you just described is a definition of good.
Yeah.
And that's what's often lacking, right? Not just go, weld those 2 things together or wire that, box together or solder those pipes together, right? It's beyond that. It's should it feel like, look like, or what should the end result be? And it should be sort of clearly defined as in like a mission statement almost.
Exactly. And then tying it into what is the impact? What will this facility be used for?
Yeah.
Right. So that not just will it be beautiful and you can bring your kids through it and you can take pride in it every time you drive past that building. But maybe that's a building that is a hospital that someone's going to get their chemo treatment in every single day.
Yeah.
And that's something that's incredibly important because you've got a story and a tie to it.
Yeah.
We all want what we do to be impactful.
Yeah.
We're not good at telling the story and connecting the dots.
Yeah. So that's a very often overlooked piece in the trades, is that, we need to help everybody in the organization understand, even at a project by project level, like what impact their contribution is going to make to the community, and what good looks like by the time they're done with their piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it gives the individual some more purpose, some guiding lights. If they're wondering if I should cut a corner or not, they can always look back to that little mini mission or, vision for a project, and they can say, is that alignment or is it not alignment? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And a great way to do that is when you're hiring, name what is the purpose of each of these positions, right? Name, here's what we're doing at our firm. We're here to give back to the community through the buildings that we build. We're collaborative where we're pulling folks up through the school system. We're giving back to the community. We're going to the baseball games. We're going to all these things. And that dedication and, that responsibility, whatever those core values are, when you can tie those things back together and line it into each job, then the question becomes, this is what we do here within each job. Do you see yourself here at all? Yeah, I see myself in a welder role. Great. How is the welder role here at, people builders more attractive to you than the welder role over at XYZ organization?
Yeah.
And what we're starting to do is align their personal values into the organizational values. If they can truly see themselves as a part of this team up front, we've already won half of the battle.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we're all looking to improve our own quality of lives, and our own personal value system is most important. So whether I'm a welder or the leader of the company, that ultimately is, what I'm striving for, so that alignment can build in sort of that stickiness to the relationship. And without that vision, hard to build, right?
Correct.
So oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it creates clarity of the expectation of the end results. When we don't give clarity as a leader, we're setting them up to fail and ourselves up to fail.
Yeah. Yeah. Go back to this idea of taking sort of ownership of the problems instead of bitching. How do we begin to change that mindset to take more of an ownership mindset?
Yeah.
Especially as a leadership, side of this. I mean, thinking about the talent acquisition piece of this, there are no good trades out there anymore. I mean, there is a shortage of people in the construction industry, and there's an even bigger shortage
100%.
of people in the trades. So instead of just throwing our hands up in the air and being like, it's hopeless.
Right.
What do we do?
Right. So the first thing is to shift the mindset into it's a complaint into, ooh, this is a fun challenge to solve, right?
Yeah.
So when we can shift that, and especially when we hear folks complaining, that we go out in the field and, typically, and I don't know about you, but when I walk in the field, a lot of times I'm hearing 4 or 5 complaints right away. And I'm going, especially when I first start working with a client, right? And it's like, okay, tell me more about that. And just providing the space to listen sends a message to the individual that they're valued.
Yeah.
Which brings in the engagement. So I hear from you as the CEO of this organization that just hired me that says there's no good people to hire out here, right? Yeah. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set an intention of what do I want to get out of this conversation? I want to understand the outcome that you're looking for. So my whole intention of this conversation is to understand the result that you want and what had you land on the complaint, right? So I'm then going to say, hey, Fletcher, thank you so much. I hear you saying there's no good people to hire out there. So I'm curious kind of where that's coming from and what you've tried so far so that we can work towards a solution together. What do you think?
Okay. Well, I'm willing to try anything at this point.
Right. So now we're going to go through the facts of what you've tried, right? And, we're going to see, hey, we just post things out there, nothing comes in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, is it okay if we start to talk about some potential solutions in there, or do you see any other ways that we could potentially recruit to bring folks in?
Yeah.
And the
Well,
first time we have the conversation is going to be no.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it'd be like, I tried this, I tried that, I tried this, and
Right.
none of those things ever worked. Right.
Right. Right.
So, often you end in this kind of like cyclical circle where they're just like, no, 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 doesn't work, doesn't work, doesn't work, doesn't work.
Right.
So, okay. So you get to the end of that kind of death spiral.
Yep. And
So
then
now what are you going to do? Right.
yeah. And so then it's the curiosity. Are you
Yeah.
willing to try a couple of things that may be different?
Yeah.
And if there was no risk, what would you try first? You
Yeah.
notice I have some ideas. I'd much rather have you name them and ask the questions to lead you to them. Because what I'm doing is I'm starting to share my thought process with you so that you start thinking those things and learn a different thought process versus just, you know what, every time there's an issue, I'm just going to go to my manager because they're going to tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I surrender all creative or control over my own destiny because I'm just going to let somebody else just tell me what to do.
Correct. And I just want to name, I feel like we're having two different conversations here. We've got the conversation that happens with the CEO, which is a different level conversation than a conversation that's going to happen with a tradesperson that's out in the field. So I just want to name that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're pushing them together.
Yeah. And I want to focus on, primarily the CEO, but look, I mean, at the end of the day, there's two pieces of this. There's the hopeless CEO is like, I just give up. Right.
Right.
It is just what it is. And I don't really buy that. Right.
Correct.
That nothing is just what it is. There's always somebody doing it well or better or succeeding or winning at that thing. Right. The question I think is, are you willing to do what it takes?
And are you willing to get creative to get outside of the box in order to start to look at where can we have some wins and where can we start to build upon those wins? So
I often think that the solution is in the solutions they've already tried. It's that the execution of those solutions that they've already tried, was maybe half-hearted, misguided, and that's totally fair because half of these things that nobody teaches us to do as leaders or even HR professionals for that matter, right?
Correct.
Like we're all just kind of learning through osmosis and stumbling our way through when it comes to hiring in particular and leadership as well, right? So I feel like, a lot of times you could go through that list of 10 ideas and be like, I tried that, I tried that, I tried that, I tried that. You probably get a no, 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 no. But, at the end of the day, the creativity is not in the, job boards don't work. It's the way you use them didn't work.
Correct.
Right.
Yep, for sure. And so if we're going to jump into, there's no great people out there, right? And so we've gone through and we've figured out what we've tried. And then it's really, for me, it's listening into what isn't being said.
Yeah.
Which goes directly into job boards don't work. Well, why don't job boards not work?
Yeah.
Or why haven't job boards worked for you?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And
like I get 1,000 candidates and none of them are relevant.
Right. Yep. So, all right. So how do we get relevant candidates?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You're the expert.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes back to this willingness to improve, right? And to solve this problem.
Yep.
And I think that's the light switch moment that the leaders especially in the trades, really, they got to have at some point, and I think one of the challenges with that is a lot of these folks came from being in the trades. They were the best mechanic, and then maybe they became an okay manager, and they just haven't elevated to becoming an entrepreneur yet, right? And using the old EMF, ideas here. So,
And sometimes they are not the right person that someone like me should be talking with.
yeah,
Right. So many times it is, I may say to you, Fletcher, as the CEO, Fletcher, do you want to be involved in this process? And you're going to say, no.
no.
And say, great. What is the result that you're looking for? And you're going to say, hey, and we typically start with what's your business strategy? What's the business result you want? All right. So right now we're at 10 million. We want to get to 15 million. We're going to do that by expansion into 3 additional cities and blah, blah, blah. Right. So when I can understand that and where the current gaps are very specifically in your hiring right now I can go, okay, great. So who is that person that is responsible for this in 2 ways? One, there's an administrative responsibility. And second, there is a skin in the game responsibility of every manager. I won't just work with an administrative person. I need to be connected with who is directly connected to the people and leading them, because they are going to be that best person, both from an onboarding standpoint, from a let's make the offer standpoint,
Yeah,
because we're making a
decision.
connection there.
They're the decision makers.
Well, they should be. Most of the time, they're not.
Yeah.
In my experience in the trades, unfortunately.
Yeah, when you delegate hiring decisions to an HR person or an admin.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, like they're not qualified to make that. They do have a role, as you mentioned, in the process to help be a facilitator in that process.
Correct. Have them do the busy work.
Yeah.
To put the resumes, and you're not even going to get resumes.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. You might get a napkin.
Yeah, which is okay.
Yeah.
Depending, but
yeah, it's some really good welders write the resumes on a napkin. No, yeah, and I think that's important. And so the frontline managers, have to take full responsibility of their hiring in terms of their ownership of the outcome of that hiring process, is what you're saying, right?
Correct. But here's something else I want to throw out there is we need to find people where they're at.
Yeah.
So we are in a digital generation. What that means is people aren't going to your website. They're on social media. Yeah. And there's how many different social medias? They're probably not on Facebook. They're probably not on LinkedIn. Where are they that we can meet them and put out the messages that they're actually reading?
So when you're talking about trades, so give us the secret sauce. Where do you find trades in a digital world?
Ask your people.
No, referrals.
Well, not just referrals, but they've got their phones out, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what sites are you guys on?
I don't know. What sites are they on?
Well, it depends upon which ones are there, right?
Yeah.
So with that being said, and Threads just came out, Instagram's out, X or Twitter, but I can't necessarily say a one size fits all. Yeah. What I can say is your best bet is to ask your people where they're at.
Yeah. Where do they hang out? What forums are they're chatting in or learning from?
Right.
Yeah. Which communities are they part of? Right.
Right.
Online.
And then it's and I'm not trying to use a big word here, but I'm going to, but it's what's your employee value proposition? And what I mean by that is, why are you a great place to work?
Yeah.
Go talk to your people. Hey, why do you stay?
Yeah.
Well, I stayed because X, Y, and Z. Right. So if you can, you need to use the words of your employees. They can tell you why they stay, where they're at. You have to have trust in order to do that. So a lot of times I find there's a trust building exercise that has to happen first.
Yeah.
And then once we have that information and we start sharing it and we ask them to share it, yes, you should have a referral bonus program that should be pretty hefty right now. Like, the $2,000 plus is what we're seeing quite frequently.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's going to be cheaper than a recruiter.
Yep.
And you're going to do it organically, and you're organically building your brand.
Well, statistically, you're going to end up with a much higher quality, longer lasting employee if it's done through a referral, right? Doesn't mean they're 1 for 1. They're not all going to be home runs, but statistically vast, much, much higher odds of success than hiring them off a job board or even a recruiter for that matter.
Yeah.
Recruiter success rates are quite low, especially if you're hiring from staffing agencies.
Correct. Yep.
um,
And then from there, how are you onboarding them? Like we
yeah,
have a mentor program where we, do 8 to 10 hours of training with individuals that are framers. They're,
yeah,
they are in those line level roles and they're ready for enroll growth. And what that mentor program does is it solves turnover in the first 90 days, but it also helps to solve turnover with those folks that have been there 3 to 5 years that aren't ready for a leadership role and may not want a people leader role. However, they're bored in their role and they're not quite sure where to go. So
yeah,
it's a great retention strategy for both of those. And it helps those mentors know, do I want to move into a people leadership role or do I want to move further down an apprenticeship track
yeah.
or, something like that?
Yep. No, that's a great point. So, too many people get elevated to a level of leadership or manager, and they, some often quickly find out like I don't want to do this. And next thing you know, they're being exited from the organization when they were previously a great culture and team player and performer, right? And so it's this whole like getting promoted to a level of dislike almost, or they say incompetence. But yeah, I love that. So the mentorship role is a great retention strategy for your best technicians, as
Mhm.
well as a great way to create a more friendly way to indoctrinate new people into your culture, into your organization, which results in better retention, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so I love
And
this because you touched on like two really big areas, bookends of this. Uh, Interview your existing workforce about what you're providing for them that makes them like being here. Use
mhm,
that to create your employer value proposition. Get really clear about what kind of good looks like and what the mission is and the purpose of the role. And this is what we call like the foundational steps to the hiring process,
very much so.
because we often see people just skip that completely, just steal a job ad from Indeed, repost that as their own, and off they go and they haven't even thought about it.
Well,
Right?
can we just say, do not post a job description?
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. First and foremost. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know how many
So,
job descriptions are out there when you look?
yeah.
90% of them. Don't post a job description.
And that's why they call it a job advertisement. Not, a job description has a place in this process, but it's not the thing that you use to market your jobs, right? So,
Right.
um, but that is one big giant mistake that many leaders make, is they just skip all that foundational step. They just rush on to posting a job description or something, some noise, and they get some noise back. And sometimes maybe they get the gem, but more often than not, they find that as a mistake, right? But
Mhm.
that training and onboarding piece, that kind of assimilation part of that is sometimes they might have hired a rock star, an amazing, talented person, but they just totally dropped the ball on like indoctrinating them into their business, right?
Or they're indoctrinating them in a way that does not make them feel good about the decision they made. For
Yeah,
example, the guy shows up to work or gal shows up to
yeah,
work on day 3, comes out to the job site, and typically, they do their tool talk right away in the morning on the job site in the middle of in the middle of the field. And so they are standing there, it's pouring rain. The rest of the crew is sitting in the job trailer laughing at him and nobody's going out to pull them in
yeah,
until they're soaked. Like,
yeah,
let's not do that, right?
yeah,
And so, I mean, let's face it, first times suck, right?
yeah,
Like the first time we do anything is not fun. And so when we can make that first day, first week on the job easier for someone, then guess what? They're much more likely to build a stronger relationship and want to stay there. So things as simple as, hey, Fletcher, I know you're starting tomorrow with our organization. I just wanted to, see if you had any questions.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, check in with them at the end of the day and how to
right,
go, and like,
right,
hey, here's what to expect tomorrow. And again, I love
right,
that mentor, that like that's a buddy system, right? So
right.
I'm
But
pairing you with somebody else, and they have the right expectation, understand it's their job to sort of take care of,
yeah,
me or them, right?
right. And that call that's like, hey, just wanted to check in to see if you're good for the next day. That's not coming from HR. That's not coming from the manager. That's coming from this mentor who says, hey, Fletcher, I'm Traci. I'm also a tech. I've been here for 3 years. I'm going to be your buddy for the first 6 weeks or so. Just wanted to kind of check in peer to peer to see if there's anything that you need.
Yeah. Yep.
You're much more likely to tell me something than you are HR, your manager.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't get my tools, or I still on my phone, or like whatever, right? Because little silly things like that. Ideally, we don't want to drop the ball on them, but they do get dropped, and you create a venue to be able to have a kind of a positive way to resolve those things, and not just leave me wondering if I'm ever going to get a hammer.
Well, and the biggest things that come up is lunch.
Yeah. When do I get to eat?
Lunch is a big one. What will my schedule be, and where do I find the schedule, especially if we're out at different job sites?
Yeah.
Is my first day going to be the same length of time as the rest of the days? Some of the PPE safety equipment, like, hey, do I need to have, they're not steel toe boots, but whatever they are, do I need my steel toe boots? Do I need to bring all these things with me and my tool list? What do I need on the first day, or what's being provided? Like, those are really, really important pieces of information that so often get overlooked because we assume people know it versus defining what the expectation is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I love this. So I think you're really punctuating 2 areas here. We talked about a lot today. We talked a little bit about how to find folks. We didn't get to dive into, how do you know if you got the right person, but, and we really got to punctuate what I love. I mean, definitely by far one of the best concepts I want to hope people gravitate to is take extreme ownership of these problems. Like, they are solvable, right? Mm-hmm. And so this feeling of like, it's something that we really want to address. And, there is hope. I've seen trade organizations go from 400% turnover to 20%. So you can solve this. So if you're running 100%, 200% turnover in your frontline workers, these ideas that Traci's talking about are part of the puzzle to beginning to solve that. You just have to want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
How can people get a hold of you, Traci?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on LinkedIn, so you can send me a message there, or our website is elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you do like these podcasts, we have a podcast called the People Strategy Podcast, where we bring on trade leaders to talk about how they've solved their people issues.
Amazing. And Traci, I'll make sure that all of that is in the show notes and any kind of content that we put out there, so people will know how to get a hold of you. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to our People First Builders podcast. If you're a successful construction CEO and would like to tell your story on this program, please visit our podcast homepage, fletcherwimbush.com/peoplefirstbuilders, or check it out in the notes below. If you got something out of this interview and would like to share the episode on the socials, we always appreciate that. Just take a quick screenshot with your phone, text it to a friend, or post it to the socials. If you know someone who might be a great guest, tag them on social and let them know. And don't forget, #PeopleFirstBuilders. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We're regularly putting out new content. To make sure that you don't miss out on any episodes, go ahead and hit subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Your thumbs up and ratings and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, fletcherwimbush.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.